All right. We'll see if the wind works. We'll go ahead and leave this on. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, Albuquerque, and most importantly, West Side open space enthusiasts. Woo, all right. This is, first off, I'm so grateful to see a lot of folks in COVID-safe way outside, etc. But it is awesome because what a journey this has been. And so we're going to reflect a little bit on it. But let me start, I guess, with my slice of it. You know, back in the day as a spry 17-year-old, I used to run up and down this arroyo right here where these houses are. And we would loop back to go to Pius. It was called Tour de Pius. And that was a punishment when the football team got caught partying. So I also remember, throwing up and other things because we were running so hard. It was not fun at all. But I actually remembered the topography. It's funny how it is, but like when you, it was still better than being in the gym and when you're just out in the outdoors, no matter what it's doing. Even back then, just thought this whole area was beautiful. And of course, for 4 years of my life, spent most of it just right on the other side of that short mesa right there. So for me, some memories here, and I remember the house. So the amazing thing, of course, is this house was here, and we used to jog by it, and I would be like, that's a beautiful house, and then keep going. So anyway, that story is really not important to any of this, but I just thought I'd share it because I thought of it when I was driving down the road. So let's talk about why we're here especially. Look, at the end of the day, we're here basically to announce our newest open space acquisition. Lots to share on this, but this is 23 acres right next to the San Antonio Oxbow, formerly known as the Poole property. So this is a done deal. So for that, let's just pause. And it was hard to get done. And I was telling some of the community members, fundamentally, I know there were a lot of ins and outs, like around the zoning and the planning when they were, trying to develop this area. And, I do just want to say, at least as far as I know, that was just normal city bureaucracy and permitting and all that. We always wanted to buy this. I said that from day one. I said it when I was campaigning. I said it when I was out here. But unfortunately, the mayor can't just cut a check and buy 23 acres by themselves. So it takes a lot of things. And so we have a lot of people to thank. But look, the biggest thing is originally, we didn't have a willing seller originally. That was a stumbling block. I mean, it's really hard to do that if you don't have a willing seller. And the other thing is we didn't have any money. So we fixed both those problems. And so I do want to thank the seller for coming around and really helping us leave a gift for generations, literally, for everyone in central New Mexico to enjoy this precious piece of property. And so we're very grateful for that. And of course, we're grateful for everyone who rounded up the funds. So let me touch on a few aspects of this. And two, what we're going to do instead of a ribbon cutting, we're going to open the gate and I'll rush in. And take the public is going to take the Poole property on behalf of everyone in central New Mexico to enjoy. So that's what we're going to do when we're done talking. So a couple of things, one is I clearly want to thank all the neighborhood advocates. A lot are here, a lot aren't. Great job sticking with it, the tenaciousness. We have a city councilor, of course, who couldn't vote on this because she was conflicted, originally, but now as a city councilor, but originally started some of her own engagement and advocacy around the Poole property. So I think another kind of small world in terms of land's evolving role in making this a reality. So very cool, and more from her in just a minute. But, I also want to thank the community for taking time, at least, with my administration, to have some patience and to also kind of listen to where the rubs are, right? Because I know there were a lot of myths back and forth, and we had to kind of go through with our Parks and Rec team and just say, well, like, this is true, but this isn't, and that's true, and maybe we can do this. And there was a lot of problem solving. And I think that's kind of all I ever ask from communities, and hopefully that's all you ever ask from us, is to continue to talk and to work together. And sometimes we deliver big, and that's what we're doing here today. So thank you so much for the community in that process. Now, I'll introduce the councilors and some others elected officials in a minute, but there are some elected officials who couldn't be here today, mostly because they're either in a Zoom hearing or they're up in Santa Fe. So I do want to give a special appreciation. You know, the governor had a little hand in this. We want to thank the governor, especially for not vetoing this money. And so thank you, Michelle Lujan Grisham. And two counselors, or two, you know, all the elected titles just merged together after a while. One senator and one representative that were very helpful. First, Representative Mo Maestas from this area played a key role in getting this through. Let's give him a round of applause and the funding. And I do want to give special shout outs. I think, you know, in our time of need, I remember having a conversation with Senator Candelaria. And that's right, he put in a huge chunk of money and really threw around a lot of muscle to get that money out the door. So, you know, it takes all of us, right? The small things mattered and the big things mattered. But I remember telling neighborhoods and talking to the senator and saying, look, like, we're majorly short here. You know, as much as we want 100,000 and 200,000, and those are all important. But I was like, we just can't, I mean, we're like 4 million short. And to his credit, all of a sudden 4 million showed up. So that's the magic that sometimes a state legislator and a state senator can pull off. And so we appreciate Jacob. One more round of applause. Okay, so we are going to hear from our city councilors and our county commissioner. There are so many awesome community members here. We have one to represent, at least on camera. So we are going to hear community perspective. And so let me begin to hand it off by those folks. But I do just, I think, want to say, I want to thank the Open Space Advisory Board. I know this was tough in many, so let's give them a round of applause. And, you know, there are, for very good reason, there are master plans and there are long-term rules and regs. You know, but also I think we acknowledge that with the majority vote, sometimes you got to change those to take advantage of an opportunity. And the Open Space Advisory Board was very receptive to that concept. And we just said, look, you know, 5 years ago, this wasn't on the table. Now it is. Let's do it. And so I really appreciate them. And of course, council handled it the same way. But yeah, this was not in the cards. But when it became a reality, you got to seize that opportunity. And that's what this was all about. And so, and then my last thank you before I hand it off. There are a ton of city people who worked really hard on this. You know, I want to start with the planning department, who tried as best as they could to both accommodate, you know, at one point a development here, but still have public access. I mean, I do know they tried hard, so I want to thank them. I want to thank our legal department, played a huge role in putting this together. Alan Varela is back there. Good job on this one. This is a big transaction. You can thank him for a couple of others too, Gateway Center, some small projects around town. And so the whole legal team, of course, and Steve Aguilar, our city attorney, but also our parks team. So Dave Simon, who's going to share a little bit, but also Colleen, who you know, our superintendent, and the other team with parks and open space. This is now yours to curate and have fun with and make good things happen with. And I think that does bring me to our next speaker. And I will tell you, you know, there is interesting, I'm so fortunate at the city to have some very good members on our executive team. And they rise to the occasion in different ways. You know, sometimes it's some of them, whether it's with APD or fire and things like this, or building a new police department. And then there's others like our COO, Lawrence Rael. And it's like, Lawrence, would you just buy the Poole property, make it happen? And lo and behold, it does. So with that, let's let him tell his story. Lawrence Rael, come on up.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank all of you for being here. And, you know, this is an interesting time for me because, as many of you may or may not know, I was here before in the previous administrations. And I was early on when we first bought the Oxbow, I was part of that conversation and part of that work years ago. So as I was telling a couple of folks as I was walking up, buying this property is sort of icing on the cake. Really makes it all just a much better. And so, you know, famous president once said that things don't just happen, people make them happen. And you are the people that made it happen. So again, let's give all of you a round of applause for all the work you did. As the mayor indicated, this was a partnership that really was early on. We had conversations about this, and as the mayor said, he was very enthusiastic about trying to figure out if this doesn't come together through the planning process, is there some way to keep this parcel of land in the public's hands? And lo and behold, our legislators stepped up. So, give you a perspective, the legislature came through with $4.6 million for the acquisition of this property. The city council, the president, Councilor Borrego, and Councilor Sena and their colleagues on the city council pitched in another $2 million from various funds that we had at the city. And then, quite frankly, at a point where we could really have used needed another partner, Commissioner O'Malley came in with $100,000 from the county, from Bernalillo County. So, really an outstanding way to move a project like this forward when you can bring, various governmental entities together to make something happen, and something that's really good. And I give the credit to our elected officials. They've really all stepped up and really done a really great service for this community. And then last but not least, I will say to all of you, look, city government works when citizens get involved and participate and share their thoughts and opinions with our elected officials. Sometimes we don't always hear them very well, but just make sure that you always know that we're listening and that we're trying our best to make things happen. And look, this is one of those days to celebrate. So as the mayor says, future generations in New Mexico, in this area of Albuquerque, are going to stand up there and wonder, how did this all happen? And someday I'll share the story with some of you as to how it happened on a cold November afternoon or January evening when I got a call from an attorney who said, the owner wants to talk, but he only wants to talk to you. So it sort of started that way, and it worked itself out. And you know what? It was a team effort, and I really appreciate all the staff from the city and the work that they did to get this to come to fruition. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the mayor. But thank you all for being here.
All right, so he's continuing the most, has his name on the most plaques in the city of Albuquerque. He's going to get another one when we rehab this a little bit, so great job. Now, there's several elected officials here, and, kind of traditionally we do begin with the largest entity, and so I do want to mention, I have known Commissioner O'Malley for a long time now. It's kind of interesting how it becomes a long time after a while. We're at least 10 plus in. And she is able to show up and help in, I think, the most, ways that are just so selfless and wonderful. We did need extra money at the end, and I'll talk about kind of what council did and so forth, but we were still a little short. And we also always want to partner with the county. And I don't know all the backstory other than all of a sudden I was told, Debbie wants to help out. And, that's a really cool thing. Like, elected officials rarely say that. They're usually, they're usually calling to not so much, they need help or whatever. So to just have Debbie say, I want to help is a great thing. And so we're very fortunate. County is an investor in this as well. And so Commissioner O'Malley, come on.
All right, Debbie. Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon. And thank you for the opportunity for me to say a few words. The county really did have a very small role in this. It's sort of toward the end. I got a call from President Borrego, Cynthia Borrego, and a couple weeks ago, and she said, "Hey, can you give us some money?" Sort of like that. And she said, "We need some money to close, so we just have a gap." And I asked her what the gap was, and she told me, and I said, "Okay, well, I'll go ask for it." I was happy to do it. I was happy to take that before the commission, and I want to thank the commission for unanimously supporting that. But, asking you shall receive. So she did, and so I got to credit her for asking. Also, I want to recognize and thank a very old friend here, Dr. Joe Vias, and I'm sure people will mention him as we move forward, but he really organized a lot of people around this. I know there's a lot of folks who have worked on this for some time now, but it really was, I kept hearing from Joe, emails and calls, and so he was just so determined and relentless. So I have to give you credit, Joe, because I think that you really carried a lot and made a big difference. So thank you for that. So now, of course, we have this this wonderful property that is going to be preserved, taken care of. It's basically been rescued in some way and protected, and it's part of our living river. And we're very fortunate to have a living river, right, going through the city. This isn't San Antonio with a made-up river. This is a real river and a wild river. And so whatever we can do to preserve that and keep the you know, the wildlife here and do what we can to preserve this for generations. So thank you very much. Thank you all to the city of Albuquerque, the state, mayor, everyone, Lawrence, and all the folks who made this happen. I know it was a huge effort on part of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. All right, thank you so much, Commissioner. And we have two amazing counselors here with us, and you know, as fate would have it, of course, they both represent this area. I forget. I think the dividing line's kind of Montano, but anyway, they're both champions of the West Side. And I mentioned a little bit about Councilor Sena's, you know, kind of full circle experience being back here. But also, Councilor Borrego, you know, this was the perfect time to have you as president. So, you know, what's also amazing is, you know, just a lot of things lined up because, once again, we really needed help. We got money from the legislature. You know, Lawrence scrounged up a few million here or there, but, you know, those things take a council vote. And, you know, all councilors, they all rightfully so fight for funds for their area. And so it really is special when folks can agree on a citywide priority, but also when they can have a president to really kind of bring them together and bring in the county too. So with that, our council president, Cynthia Borrego.
Wow. What a great day. I'm really elated to be here today. It's funny how things happen in life. I remember when I was in city planning, probably in the 90s, late 80s, 90s, and we were working on the Oxbow and this whole development over here. And we were worried about the riparian issues and the ecological issues and just so many issues that came to be with development. And you know, when this came about, and you know that I also serve as your MAFCA representative for the West Side, and it came to the City Council for development, I thought to myself, you know, I can't vote on this property because I represent a MAFCA, and they're proposing to use some of this property for open space, and I just didn't think that that was really a great idea because, you know, if a developer is going to develop, they should develop the property that they have and not try to sort of weasel their way into it. I shouldn't say that word, but use that, you know, someone else's property to make their development happen. So I recused myself at that point in time because I thought, you know what, there's a bigger issue here, and it's regarding policy and drainage policy and how drainage policy is developed. And so at that same point in time, Councilor Sena also recused herself, and it was like, oh boy, you know, here we go. So it was kind of a wild ride because there were people that were not happy with either one of us because we did recuse ourselves, but we did it for good reason. And lo and behold, here we are today. We would never have realized that this would be the final situation that we were in. And what an amazing place for the future of our kids. When I thought about how we were going to get the money for this, I thought, you know, I equate this type of development to, or this type of open space to, you know, Valle de Oro or Elena Gallegos or the petroglyphs, because it is so sensitive. It's such a sensitive area, and for all of you out there that understand that sensitivity and brought it to us, thank you. Seriously. Thank you, because it, you know, and they say, you know, legislators and counselors and mayors, we don't always see everything, but we do hear, and there was a strong enough voice that was telling us we needed to do something. And that's the time when you need to have elected officials that listen. I want you to please thank Commissioner O'Malley, because behind the scenes I was like, hey, Debbie, can you help me out here? I mean, we need some money. And she stepped up to the plate. Thank you, Senator Candelaria. Thank you to our mayor for having the vision. To Lawrence Royale, all of the people that made this happen. Thank you for this. And, you know, like I said, I think our kids are going to learn. There's a lot to be learned from this property and to preserving it. So thank you all for bringing this forward to us.
Okay, and before we get to our open space and community comments, want to introduce one last elected official here, of course, the counselor for this area. So, and her amazing assistant counselor, Sterling. And you know, we've shared a lot of, I think, perspective on this, but you know, too, you know, I had the good fortune of appointing Lan, so that worked out great so far. So keep it up. And you know, it also is just a really special kind of full circle to be here and celebrating this. You know, I didn't really think this was going to happen. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, this was, you know, last summer. And I don't want to speak for her, but I think, you know, it was also kind of, I was like, man, I can't believe we couldn't get this done. And so it's also just makes it extra special to be here celebrating that we did get it done. Councilor.
Yes, and thank you, Mayor. What can I say? It's been an interesting year for myself since being appointed, and you can't have land acquisition without land, I guess. Jokes aside, I definitely think that this would not have been possible without community. It was mentioned by Commissioner O'Malley, Dr. Joe. Dr. Joe and I first started through our neighborhood association and having conversations about the Poole property and its importance. And I recall, you know, submitting petition signatures, it not going through online. So he drove over to my house and knocked on my door like at 8 or 9 o'clock at night and said, you know, I need this signature. And I said, absolutely, let's do it. Which also led to my recusal, since being part of the neighborhood associations that signed on to protest the development. So it has been a full circle, and it's been an interesting year, to say the least. And, you know, I do want to thank the leadership of Senator Candelaria, because without him spearheading and whipping up the votes to get other West Side legislators to contribute, we wouldn't have the leverage really to where we are today, not just to buy the property, but also ask others and look for other sources of funding, even among council. Also thanking our open space board. I know that we had some disagreements, but in the end it was more of process, not the importance, and just seeing how much the Poole property and this whole area is so critical to the West Side. And I brought Sterling here with me today because just knowing that so many of our generations will be able to enjoy this, but also our four-legged friends. And when I first met the mayor too, my niece was very young, and now knowing that she'll get to enjoy this area for years to come as well really does warm my heart. So with that, I don't want to go too much because I know that it was already stated, but again, I can't thank community enough. And our legislators and all governments that were involved and people that were involved, including the seller, for being willing to work with us and be patient enough to have us go through this own process and acquire the funds. But thank you to Dr. Joe, Ken Churchill, Renee Horvath. Those are some of the community leaders, and Wisconsin, and Dr. Susan Chadois, who will be speaking in a moment. But thanking community members, because again, without you all, it wouldn't be possible. So thank you, and I was so very glad to be a part of this, to really push us through the finish line. So thank you.
All right, thanks so much. And you know, now as we kind of shift to past, present, and future, this property is now, of course, going to be under the care of a very capable department. And we're joined by the director of our Parks Department, which, of course, has open space in it as well. And our Parks Director has always loved open space. I mean, I think some of you may know he was like State Parks Director, and you had some other outdoors role in there for a while. Game and Fish? Cub Scout. We're both Cub Scouts. And he still got the unit. Well, no, just. And so, anyway, this guy lives and breathes Parks and Rec and open space. Dave Simon. You want her to go first? Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah. I was just going in the, you know, okay, we're going to go community first. So, Dr. Susan, we're ready for you. And, you know, I would just add, too, that it is true. This would have never happened without the community, right? There's no way, whether if it's a county commissioner, a city councilor, and even a mayor, too, like, you just can't do a project this big without the community behind it. That's what it takes. And I think it's also just a good lesson. That's kind of what it always takes for any big idea. And so we really appreciate you making this happen. And so on behalf of a bunch of great faces that I see behind masks there, Dr. Susan Chadwar, close.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a little out of my comfort zone. I love doing work behind the scenes. So I feel somewhat inadequate to do justice in representing all those who have given so much to this achievement today. And I am emotional because it's been a long battle. Yes, the news, Mayor Keller, it comes at a good time in my own breast cancer journey. It was unfortunate that I was diagnosed in this effort. But I've been asked to share what it means to be a leading part of protecting formerly the Poole property. I hope we still, don't forget that name. Because for us as the community, by association, this property is connected to that family. And by extension, this property has cultural as well as ecological legacies that are going to be always tied to it in our minds. Now, I've been motivated by some very exceptional people all my life, and I'm always driven by their stories. And there is no doubt that Susie Poole was an exceptional woman, if you want to use that term, with her stories, as I'm sure Mr. Rael will remember very well. But those colorful stories are tied to that family who's lived here since 1957. We have a lot of valuable history that's worth protecting here on the west side, and this isn't going to be the last of our efforts. Today we're celebrating acquisition of this property, which for us as a community was a 3-year effort, as we've talked about in it for the long haul. And there's been hundreds of people with thousands of, I think, very valiant, admirable, and sacrificial stories to tell. And while I'd love to tell them all, I really wanted to think what was the central theme that tied all of the stories together. And for me, that central theme was that this was just too important. And it's the theme I heard from our speakers today. And Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you'll remember, but those were your exact words to me right around Labor Day of 2018 when I serendipitously ran into you at the Natural History Museum. And I approached him to tell him about a community concern regarding this property. And without hesitating, as he mentioned to you, I say it with such passion because that's the way he was with me. He was right in front of me just expressing, I am on it, I am with you, I will do what I can to support you. And he said, because this is just too important. So that was a call to action for us in our home if you will, home meeting groups, because we knew that there was a development being slated for approval, but we felt that there was something more important to be done with this property. It might have been a long haul, but I can say that I like to put our action into these terms over this last 3 years, or almost 3 years. It's been roughly 140 weeks of community effort, almost 60,000 hours of time and effort, and roughly $750,000 in pro bono services and legal donations that have come over the last 3 years. Irrespective of whom we've talked to about protecting this property, the response has been identical to Mayor Keller's. We've never been turned away by any individual, any conservation organization, any of the land trusts, any of our senators or legislators, including the commissioner here. So today, as we want to celebrate something, I think this is an achievement, but what I celebrate today is the kind of unity. I think the unity is one thing that I think of, and that's what I think is worth celebrating, because every single one that we approached over this effort backed up their words with action. So if I may, I'd like to close by thanking some of those who are invited here today, along with counselors / champions, Councilors Sena and Borrego. As mentioned, we are, as a community, extremely grateful to Governor Lujan Grisham and Senator Jacob Candelaria, who really saw the vision that we did at first meeting. Senator Cedillo Lopez and Representative Maestas and all the other 11 state legislators from all these districts that came together. They are districts 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 23, 26, 29, 31, and 68. All these districts came together. Their constituents showed us the love, as did former Senator Sandra Rue, and I'd also like to thank U.S. Senator Heinrich and former Senator Udall. These elected officials are important for me to mention here, not because we're having a press conference, but because they weaved in and out of those 140 weeks for us in some very dark times. And they encouraged us, do not give up, do not give in, because this is just too important. So I thank them very much for how they encouraged us. Locally, I want to acknowledge Albuquerque Neighborhood Voices, westsidealbuquerque.com, Taylor Ranch Neighborhood Association, the Westside Coalition of Neighborhood Associations, the Intercoalition Panel, District 4 Coalition, and just a slew of neighborhood associations like the Alameda North Valley, the South Valley, West La Cueva, Knapp Heights, Grande Heights, East Heights, Paradise Hills, and I'm sorry, the list could go on, y'all. I want to thank organizations like the Wilderness Society, the Audubon Southwest, Central New Mexico Audubon, and each and every of the public lands offices, public lands, the commissioner, Madam Commissioner O'Malley, thank you so much, right here in our own county. Each of these organizations and the commissioner provided some exceptional expertise and guidance to us. I also want to thank all of you who are here, the hundreds who attended. Remember our June 2019 rally that we had right here? Yes, I want to thank you for coming out to that, and I want to thank those who attended the November Town Hall. I especially thank the appellants as well, and 4 very core people who carried the legal load. Ken Churchill could not have been done without you. Joe Vias has been mentioned, the same. Tom Gully, and an extremely good neighborhood advocate attorney, Hess Eintema. So finally, I want to just extend thank you for Open Space coming next, because Colleen and Dave, we view this acquisition as a first step in the right direction, the first of many more celebrations that we hope are to come. I don't speak often, so I do need my notes. And we hope that it will be a, continued collaborative effort. I've always really, speaking of people I admire and stories that always motivate me, I think Colleen is one woman who I can say is a real advocate for environmental education in the entire state of New Mexico. And I've always been very motivated by your service. To us as a community, we feel that this has been just a logical thing to protect this as a landmark and by extension, the Rio Grande, the Bosque, and a very rare wetland. And I think I'll just close by sharing a story that Susie's friends communicated to me, and that when Susie lived here and she would look out onto the wetland and the river and the Bosque, she'd open her arms wide and she would say, "This is the lungs of Albuquerque. Breathe it in." So she'd make us, I hope, in the future when the public is allowed on the property, which will be some time, she'd want people to take off their shoes, dig their toes in the sand, and say, "Take it in and breathe." So let's breathe and celebrate in this moment together. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, I think we need to have some sign somewhere of that quote. That was just such a beautiful thing, and it's a great way to reflect on this area. So let's talk a little about the future and some of the details, and we've talked about them, but Colleen and Dave, if you want to come up. Sure. And I would just also mention, these two individuals, they've really transformed the city's open space in a couple of ways, but one that I want to share is reorienting, sort of creating a dual mission where we know we have to have open space in sort of sprawl, protected areas in the outside of the city. And that's because our forebears did that. That's why we have, the foothills and things like that. So we've got to do that. But they have really worked hard to also include urban open space so that we have places for us now as well. And this was part of that bigger policy shift. So thank you both for that too.
Thank you, Mayor. I think you can see why I really felt awkward going before Dr. Chaudhar. So let's give her a big round of applause. So let me just tell you kind of what was going on out here this morning before the press conference, all the prep work. It's tough to stay ahead of the mayor. A lot of prep work has to be done. But what was going on out here this morning were coyotes and raccoons were walking around. Ground squirrels and rock squirrels were coming in and out of their burrows. The mountain chickadees and flickers and the downy woodpeckers were active, and you could hear the sounds and the bird songs of the red-winged blackbird, the curve-billed thrasher, and several of the sparrow species that live here and rely on this habitat to survive and raise their children. So that's really, kind of like why everyone got together to do this. And it was all happening this morning. Those were all confirmed sightings this morning. Thank you, Bill Pentler. And if we do the right things, that's what should happen here every morning. So I want to just say, it was like 37 years ago that a very committed and dedicated group of Burqueños were out fighting to save the oxbow. And as a result of their efforts, the whole open space program grew from the roots of that citizen-led effort to save the most important wetland along 75 miles of this middle Rio Grande reach. Some of the people who were out fighting to save the oxbow and creating the open space program 37 years ago, which now has almost 30,000 acres in the network, are here today. One of them standing over there by the wall, Don Metters. So thank you to all of you who, it's a famous quote out there from Margaret Mead about what a dedicated group of citizens can achieve. And indeed, she says, to paraphrase, that's really the only thing that ever does get things done. So you, as citizen advocates, are part of a long tradition, a noble tradition here in Albuquerque and around our country of citizens taking action to save precious places. And fundamentally, that's what we're looking forward to doing as we go forward, is to protect it, but again, to share it with present and future generations. So what will come next? Well, as many of our speakers have said, this is a very sensitive place. It's a special place. We just paid a fair amount of coin for it. So I think we need to approach it humbly, which means we need to first understand and assess, what we have purchased and what we want to bequeath to future generations. So under the care of the Open Space Division led by Colleen and her staff, we envision first a period of assessment and planning, which will include extensive public involvement in trying to decide again collectively, as we did to protect the place, decide collectively what is it that we want to see here? How is it that we want human beings to interact with such a sensitive place? So that planning process will take place over the next year or so. While that's going on, of course, I think public access will be what I'll call somewhat limited in order to protect the sensitive natural and cultural resources on the site. But we do look forward very much to beginning a program of guided tours and limited public access through tours of the property. And we'll look forward to starting those efforts up also in 2020. Again, with extensive public input and guidance based on science, we will decide what public use looks like here, what limited facilities might be appropriate for the site. And then, of course, depending on our resources, we will try to improve and enhance the property in ways that protect it while opening its beauties and benefits to the public. I think in some respects, inheriting a property like this also involves a process of healing. And there's no doubt now that we have some work to do to restore the land here as well as protect it. And really that leads me to, my final point, which is that we need nature. We need nature for our health. We need nature for our physical health, for our mental health, and in fact for our spiritual health. So this site will become a great medicine, big medicine for our community, a tonic, for generations to come. And I hope that it does that for you too, Susan. So we're looking forward to going through that public input process with you all. And then again, introducing more people to the site gently and sensitively, and ultimately coming out of that process with a site that we will enjoy opening to the public in ways that that are compatible with the land and its inhabitants, introducing people of all ages to this marvelous property, and we look forward to doing that with all of you. Now, Mayor, I don't know when it was that you and the First Lady bought your first house. I'm not sure which one it was.
About 12 years ago.
Okay, I'm just going to take a wild bet that you did not pay $6.7 million for that house.
Correct.
But it sure felt great when you got the keys to that house, didn't it? I remember when I was fortunate enough to buffalo the bank into giving me a loan. And when I opened the door to that house, it was like a feeling like getting a vaccine almost. It was a great feeling. So, Mayor, I'd like to give you the honor of opening the gate and opening the door to the people's house.
Oh my gosh, look at this.
Let's
Well,
hope they work.
Thank you so much. Yes, we're going to test them out, and we're going to have our first, by reservation only, guided walkthrough of the property, as you're all qualified for by being here right now.
Yep.
So, anyway, gather around, but not too close, and let's open the gates.